Welcome, everybody. Thank you guys so much for making it out tonight. I'm glad to be able to share with you. I have a heart passion to be able to help the House of Prayer, big, small, everywhere in between. I just want to be able to do anything I can to just encourage what's going on. So I'm going to pray, and then we'll jump in. I'll tell you guys a little bit about myself, and then we'll start into the session. But Father, I want to ask you tonight in Jesus' name that you administer to these leaders. Lord, these ones that are trying to build your house in this hour. These ones, God, that have got a vision to see your name glorified, that have a vision to see the hearts of people connect to you in the place of prayer. I pray you use tonight as a resource to encourage them and to strengthen them and to give them practical tools that, Lord, if you would just highlight some of the things that get talked about tonight and then give more information to the hearts, God. Just whatever little bit I say, I pray your Holy Spirit would illuminate far more, God. That, Lord, you would birth divine ideas tonight. You would give strategy and understanding, and you would give clarity. Lord, I thank you for these leaders, and I ask you tonight in Jesus' name to equip them and to use this time that we have together in Jesus' name. Well, my name is Brad Stroup.
Hola, su nombre es Brad Stroup.
And I'm direct a House of Prayer in the Dallas area that has 100 hours of live worship.
Y dirige la casa de oración y evangelización en el área de Dallas y tiene ¿cuántas horas? Muchas horas, 180 horas. How many hours?
100 hours.
100 hours, 100 horas por semana de oración.
But we started in my living room 7.5 years ago with 0 hours.
Pero comenzó en su sala, en la sala de su casa, con 0 horas de oración, hace 7 años y medio.
So I know what it is to go from 0 to 100.
Así que ya sé lo que es de ir de 0 horas de oración a 100 horas de oración por semana.
It's a real heart passion of mine.
Es una pasión muy intensa mía.
To help ministries that are trying to build the house of prayer grow.
El ayudar a los ministerios que quieren crecer en oración.
And my specialty is providing practical steps on how to grow the house of prayer.
Y su especialidad es el ofrecer ciertos pasos estratégicos para formalizar las casas de oración.
So we're going to take 2 sessions tonight and then also on April 16th to talk about administrating the house of prayer.
Así que vamos a tener 2 sesiones esta noche donde vamos hoy y cuándo más el 16 y el 16 de abril para poder saber cómo se va a administrar la casa de oración.
So tonight is session 1, administrating the house.
Hoy es la sesión número 1, que es cómo administrar la casa.
What I've found is the foundational piece of information is that you know what it is that the Lord is calling you to as a ministry.
Okay. Una parte básica y fundamental es el saber qué es lo que el Señor está pidiendo de nosotros para poder hacer crecer el ministerio.
So the first thing I want to talk about tonight is identifying your mandate.
El primer paso es identificar lo que el Señor manda.
That is trying to figure out where the ministry is heading.
Eso nos va a ayudar a clarificar hacia dónde es que va el ministerio de oración.
Most of what we're going to talk about tonight is in the notes.
La mayor parte de las cosas de las que vamos a hablar ahora van a estar en las notas.
So you can follow along with those if you have them. I think Jennifer sent them out in an email earlier today.
Para que podamos seguirlas, parece que Jennifer las envió en un correo electrónico con anterioridad.
So let's get started.
We're waiting for the notes.
Oh, you're waiting for the notes?
Yes, we are. But we can continue translating if you want.
Okay, let's do that.
Okay.
So as with any ministry or company or business,
así como se hace con cualquier ministerio, cualquier compañía o cualquier negocio,
it's essential that you know what it is that you're ultimately trying to accomplish.
Es esencial que sepas qué es lo que quieres llegar a realizar como meta final.
I found this to be especially true about leading the house of prayer.
Y esto es especialmente cierto ahora que se va a dirigir la casa de oración.
Because there are so many different goals that might be the end goal.
Porque se pueden considerar muchas metas que pueden ser las metas finales.
You work very differently, or you build very differently if you're trying to establish 24/7 prayer.
Se trabajaría muy diferente si es que se quiere establecer una oración de 24 horas al día, 7 días a la semana.
With live worship night and day.
Sabiendo por qué es que hay que alabar día y noche.
Then if your ultimate goal is to have a room open to people, but not necessarily manned all the time.
La otra opción sería tener un cuarto abierto para hombres para la oración. Can you repeat it again, please?
Yeah. You build differently if your ultimate goal is to have a room open, but not necessarily with people in the room all the time.
Okay. La otra opción sería el tener un cuarto abierto a la oración, pero no necesariamente con personas orando todo el tiempo.
When we first started our house of prayer,
cuando nosotros comenzamos la casa de oración,
I didn't really know what it was that we were doing.
No sabía exactamente qué era lo que estábamos haciendo.
And as I started to figure out what we were doing,
me tuve que poner a darme cuenta qué era lo que estaba sucediendo.
That greatly formed what it is I poured energy into and what it was that we did as a ministry.
Para poder entonces formar en dónde es que estaba yo canalizando mi energía y hacia dónde es que iba dirigido mi ministerio.
So it's very helpful if you can identify your ultimate mandate early on.
Por eso va a ayudar mucho el que podamos identificar el mandato de Dios, entre más pronto, mejor.
So I've listed a bunch of questions that can help you identify what the Lord might be speaking to you.
Entonces vayan pensando en las preguntas para que puedan saber qué es lo que el Señor les está diciendo a ustedes.
So as we ask these questions,
según vayamos haciéndonos las preguntas,
think long term, not short term.
Piensen a largo plazo, no a corto plazo.
Think about what you think the Lord might be saying about your ministry for the 5 to 10 year time frame.
Piensen lo que el Señor ha de estar diciendo para el largo plazo de 5 a 10 años, más o menos.
All right, so now I'm going to read some of the questions, and I encourage you to think about the answers.
Ahorita voy a comenzar a leer algunas de las preguntas y les animo a que vayan ustedes pensando en cuáles son las respuestas posibles.
If you don't have answers right off the top of your head, you may want to spend some time later journaling and going over these questions again.
Si en este momento no logran tener la respuesta adecuada a la pregunta, podrían anotarla y en sus notas y después estar buscando la respuesta a las preguntas.
Question number 1.
Primer pregunta.
Why do you want a house of prayer?
¿Por qué quieres la casa de oración?
Question number 2.
Pregunta número 2.
What is the purpose of your house of prayer?
¿Cuál es el propósito de la casa de oración?
Number 3.
Número 3.
When you say house of prayer, what do you mean?
Cuando dices casa de oración, ¿qué es lo que quieres realmente decir?
What are the most important values for you as a house of prayer?
¿Cuáles son los valores más importantes para ti en una casa de oración?
What are you trying to accomplish that's different from all the other ministries that are already around you?
¿Qué es lo que quieres lograr que es diferente de los demás ministerios que están a tu alrededor?
Who are you primarily trying to minister to?
¿A quién tratas de evangelizar?
People in the community, the youth.
Gente en la comunidad, los judíos.
People in your church, lost people, saved people.
Gente en la iglesia.
Okay, so question that I was asking is, all of these questions are in light of the long-term vision for your ministry. So not short-term. We'll touch on that in a minute. These are questions you want to ask regarding, what is the ultimate purpose of the house of prayer that you're building? What is it that you feel like the Lord's speaking to you about? So question I just asked was, how many hours a week do you want to be open? And then a connected question is, how many hours a week do you want to have live worship? And again, thinking about the 5 to 10 year goal, you're trying to get a vision for what this house of prayer is going to kind of grow up into. That's really the question that we're trying to identify right now is, what is this house of prayer going to grow up into? Obviously, none of us can start 24/7, full teams and everything on day one, but that may not even be the Lord's plan for many of your ministries. You want to figure out from the Lord, what is the mandate that He has for your house? Last question I feel is pertinent to that is, are you going to offer other ministries besides prayer? And if so, what are those ministries? And, as a growing house of prayer, there are a lot of things that you maybe want to do, but what I'm encouraging people to do is to ask the Lord, what are the parameters for our house of prayer? What are we supposed to pour our energy into? What are we supposed to be building? Lord, are we supposed to be a full-time missions base that's doing a lot of different stuff, or are we supposed to, offer a few prayer meetings a week that's a real sweet environment, and we're never really probably going to have more than 20 hours a week? You want to ask the Lord where you're going to fall in that, because depending on your answer is really going to change how much the way that you build. You're really going to put in energy a lot differently if you're trying ultimately to have a fiery prayer environment for 20, 30 hours a week that maybe won't even have a worship the whole time. Maybe some of those times it's a quiet room that people can come in and just read their Bible. Maybe there's just some, devotional music playing in the background on a CD. That's awesome. You want to ask the Lord and get some blueprints from heaven. And so the first part that we've just been talking about here is me just trying to cast the vision for, there's a lot of different ways that the house of prayer can ultimately look. And it's going to be wisdom for you to try to identify as early as you can what it is that you think that the Lord is doing with you as a ministry. When you say house of prayer, what do you mean? That was one of the questions I asked, and that's a big one to help you determine what it is that you're ultimately headed towards. Okay, so that part is knowing the ultimate mandate, knowing where you're headed. Well, you also need to identify your current immediate needs. And so now that you've assessed long-term goals and you've kind of gotten the big picture, now you want to spend some time determining what your most immediate needs are. And I've got some more questions that I think are helpful questions. My hope in tonight's session is really just to be able to give you some questions to go back and ask yourself later. So I'm going to kind of introduce the concepts a little bit and then give you a bunch of questions, and then introduce the next concept and give you a bunch of questions. I think it would be helpful for you to spend some time outside of this session going over those questions and just giving yourself some time to think through the answers to them, to hear what the Holy Spirit might be saying to you, and to know what general direction you're supposed to go. All right, so immediate needs. Here are some questions that will help you identify what your immediate goals are and your immediate concerns. Question number 1, what is the biggest need today as a ministry? For a ministry that hasn't gotten started yet, the biggest need is start prayer meetings. For a ministry that's started and is really struggling, with the prayer side, it's try to make the prayer meetings flow better. For a ministry that's got, a bunch of prayer meetings going, but you need to get more people involved, it's try to figure out assimilation. How do you get people involved in the process? So number 1 question is, what is your biggest need today as a ministry? Number 2, what can you be working on to help fill that need? I mean, it just gets real practical. What do you need to be working on? And then what can you work on to help fix the problem that you're dealing with or the greatest need that you're facing? Number 3, what opportunities do you feel like the Lord is currently highlighting? That can vary so much. Sometimes that opportunity might be the Lord talking to you about connecting with a group that's in the area. Sometimes that the Lord might be highlighting the next step that you need to take as a ministry, or a person you need to get connected with, or recruiting that particular prayer leader. It's just what opportunities do you feel like the Lord is highlighting for you in this season? And then lastly, I just kind of touched on it, is what do you feel like is the next big step for your house of prayer? In order to be a growing ministry, there's always another step in the process. We're always taking steps towards the ultimate goal, and that's the reason I wanted you to spend some time identifying what your ultimate mandate is on the front end, so that you kind of know where you're headed, and then you can start to identify, well, what are the steps that you're going to take to get to that point? So it's always a question I want to know the answer to myself in our ministry, and that is, what do I feel like the next big step is? We're doing pretty good right now, but what's the next step that I can just kind of sense is probably the step that we're going to be taking? All right? The next point, and if you're on the notes at this point, I'm on part C at the bottom of page 1. And part C is entitled, Only Do What Builds Both. To be successful, you need to keep both your ultimate mandate and your short-term goals in mind when making decisions about the ministry. It's natural, it's very normal to go heavy on one or the other depending on the season. So in one season, you're going really hard after the incidentals of the day-to-day life, with the immediate needs. And the next season, you might, be really thinking about the big picture. But you always want to have both in mind, at least to some degree, because if you don't, you're going to find yourself off the path. I gave you kind of a little warning, and this warning isn't out of anything except personal experience, I promise. So I'm trying to save you sorrow upon sorrow here. The warning is, if you focus on only the big picture, you'll find yourself overwhelmed and unproductive. If you're only thinking about the big mandate, because it's so big, sometimes it's difficult to keep your head around, and you don't ever feel like you're making any big steps towards it because it's so big. But the other side is, if you only focus on the immediate needs, you'll wind up investing energy in ways that you're later going to regret, because while you may have solved some immediate problems or immediate threats, you can easily get off track of what the ultimate goal is that you're trying to accomplish. So my suggestion is that you kind of always have in mind both dynamics, the immediate needs of the ministry and then the ultimate purpose of what it is that you're trying to accomplish, where it is that the Lord's sending you, what it is that you're going to be doing kind of in the long haul. You want to have both those things in mind. And again, I've got some questions or really some statements that you can kind of turn into questions, but some statements about how to try to keep both things in mind at each step in your journey. So number one, I said, make sure not to violate your core values. Core values like righteousness, core values like prayer. I mean, if you're a house of prayer, prayer is going to be a core value. Core values, you may have a different list than the person next to you, but part of you identifying your mandate is identifying what your core values are. And you want to make sure that in your effort to accomplish your ultimate goal and in an effort to accomplish your short-term goals, that you're not violating your core values. It's very important that you don't do that. Second point would be to make sure that your current efforts, because every day we're doing something, make sure your current efforts are working towards your long-term goals. There have been times before that I kind of lost track of my long-term goals, and I looked up and I realized I was spending all this energy. I'd go to bed at night tired. I was so exhausted. I'd worked hard all day at the house of prayer. I did stuff, and I started to ask myself, what am I doing? Like, does any of this even matter to my long-term goals? And in those moments, it's when you start to go in and start cutting things. You say, I'm cutting this stuff out. It's valuable. It's good, but it doesn't help me ultimately accomplish my long-term goals. And so that's a real good checkpoint for you that you're going to want to ask yourself regularly. And then lastly, it's easy when you're in the lifestyle of prayer. You're doing prayer meetings all the time. You're trying to keep track of the big picture. It's really easy to lose track of this little point here. Number 3, make sure you're spending time every week working on short-term goals and resolving immediate threats. The Song of Solomon talks about foxes coming into the vineyard and them ruining everything. And it's the little foxes in life that can really wind up causing a tipping point for us. And so my encouragement for leaders of the House of Prayer and other ministries as well is make sure you're spending time every week, even if it's just a couple of hours, but not 0 hours. Make sure you're spending time every week resolving conflicts or trying to, and working on the immediate goals and short-term goals and immediate needs. Because one of the things we need as leaders is we need to see progress. And if we get bummed down or bogged down in all the details and we don't ever get to see the little things happen that help us see the water level rising, the steps being taken, if we don't ever see those things, it's really difficult for us as leaders to stay encouraged and to keep going. And so the only way to eat an elephant is one bite at a time. And so how do you build the house of prayer? Every week you've got to spend time doing admin, or it just doesn't happen. Every week, I got to spend time working on the short-term goals. Today I was working. I'm trying to get ready for this teaching session, but I was also working on some of my short-term goals. Working on this little project and trying to get this resource together. Just the little things, because it's those little things that if I'll work on them every week, at the end of a month or two, things are getting done that are actually sizable. And that's how we take the ministry forward. So my 3 little exhortations there is don't violate your core values, make sure your current efforts are working towards your long-term goals, and make sure you're spending time every week on your short-term goals so that you can see the progress. Okay, so if you're in the notes, now I'm on page 2 and about the middle of the page on focused infrastructure, number 2. Identifying the season. All right, now what we did in number 1 was we talked about what are your goals? What are you trying to accomplish? Well, number 2, we want to look at identifying the things that we have that are at our disposal, or in some cases that are working against us, that are going to either help or hinder us accomplishing those goals. And so part A here, I have identifying the season that you're in. Each season of ministry looks different. And man, I can definitely identify that. I've been in some version of, part or full-time ministry, mostly full, since 1999. And there have been different seasons for sure. Some seasons, I was able to get a lot of stuff done. Some seasons, it didn't seem like I could hardly get anything done. It seemed like everything was against me. And you want to be able to identify the season. And there are many factors that play into how things will look for you from one season to the next. And in order to put infrastructure into place for your ministry, you need to assess what sort of season you're in, because things will look different from one season to the next. Some seasons are growth seasons, and some seasons are just seasons to maintain what you already have going. We were in that season for maybe about a year here, up until recently. It was just a maintain. We didn't add anything. We were just trying to keep doing what we were doing. And it's important to know what season that you're in. And I've got some questions here that'll kind of help with that. And I give you a couple of verses just to kind of, give you a feel for it. Ecclesiastes 3:1-3, Solomon says that there's a time for everything and a season for every activity under heaven. A time to plant, a time to uproot, a time to tear down, and a time to build. And you need to identify what season are you in, because it may be different than what you were in 6 months ago or a year ago or a year from now. So it's very helpful to know and to be able to understand the times that you're living in. The sons of Issachar in 1 Chronicles chapter 12, it says that the sons of Issachar were men who understood the times and they knew what Israel was to do. And so you as the leader of the house of prayer, you want to know what season you're in, and you want to know what it's time for. And the best way to do that is, I've got some questions, and then ultimately you just want to ask the Lord, what you're supposed to be doing. But I found these questions to be helpful for me, just as a weak human being who I don't always hear God the way I want to. I wish I heard God crystal clear 24/7, but I don't. And these questions help me get to wise counsel about what to do and how to identify things. So here's a few questions for you on how to identify the season that you're in. One question is, how much time do you have as the human leader? How much time do you have to give to the ministry in this season? I just had a baby about 8 months ago, and man, when I had that baby, my answer to that question changed. but now she's sleeping through the night, and, our baby's sleeping through the night, so now my answer is different again. Now I've got a little bit more time. So you want to ask yourself the question, as the leader, as the director, or the pastor, or the minister, or whatever it is that your title is over the house of prayer, how much time in this season do you have to be able to invest into the prayer ministry? Question 1. Question 2, how much grace is the Lord pouring out for you to build? Now, that's a different question than time. There have been times before where I felt the Lord's grace, where I felt like I could get 10 times as much done as in other seasons, when maybe in other seasons I even had more time. But it just seemed like there was an abundance of grace being poured out, and that's something that you kind of have to discern, you and the Lord, is in identifying the season, is how much grace is the Lord pouring out and in this season for you to be able to build. Next question, number 3. How many people are currently involved in the ministry? That makes a difference, because depending on that number is depending on how many people you have to help you, how many people can help finance the work. There's a lot of answers that you can draw from off of that question alone, and that is, how many people are involved in your community at that point? Right now our number is very different than what it was for the first several years when we were in my living room, but for years we had about 10 or 15 people involved in our community, and that was the extent of our community for years. And it helped me identify what season we were in and what to give time to and what things looked like. And then another question, and this is a difficult one, but you really want to know the answer to this question, and that is, so how many people you have in the community? Here's the second question, second part of it. How much buy-in do those people have? How much vision for the ministry? Well, they kind of come around a little bit. Or maybe your answer is no, they love the house of prayer. They're going for it. They've got so much vision. They're giving their time and their energy, and they're helping finance it, and they love it. You want to figure out the answer to the question, how much overall buy-in does your community have for building the house of prayer in this hour? Because I'll tell you what, if the buy-in level is real low, if their vision for building the house of prayer is real low, you probably don't want to spend any energy at all on adding stuff. Instead, you want to spend all your energy on casting vision so that they can get buy-in. Because without vision, the people perish. You want the community that you have to have as much vision for what you're doing as you do. Now, I know that's probably going to be a stretch, but you want to try to get as close as you can. You want for the community that's running with you to have as much vision for building the house of prayer as possible, because motivated people will be there. They'll help. They'll build. They'll do it. And people that aren't motivated, they're just not going to be around much, and you're going to find yourself having to be the primary one to build in the house. All right. Next point, part B, is assessing your resources. So that last one was identifying the season that you're in. And part B kind of connects to it, but it's a little bit different. Part B is looking at the resources that you have at your disposal. Resources that you have access to pretty much breaks down to time, money, and people. Those are your 3 major resources. You can probably add a couple others, but those are the 3 major ones. And you want to assess what your resources look like for the season that you're in. You want to make sure that you're stewarding well what the Lord has given you. As the human leader, God has commissioned you to build. And that building will happen brick by brick with the resources that He puts before you, and it will not happen automatically. You will have to invest those resources wisely in order to see the house of prayer grow. So to kind of recap that one more time, the Lord puts human leaders in charge, and then He gives those human leaders access to resources, time, money, and people. And then it's the leader's responsibility to lead. And what leading looks like is trying to figure out how to invest the time, and trying to figure out how to invest the money, and trying to figure out how to best utilize the human resources that are around. Those are the raw building materials that the Lord gives us as leaders, and those things the Lord won't do for us. He won't just organize those things for us. That's our responsibility as leaders, is to steward well what the Lord gives us. So again, I gave you some questions that are good questions to help you identify what you have to work with, and how best to move forward. So I'm going to read those questions to you. Number one, what natural circumstances are working for you? What natural circumstances are working against you? You might find that, like here, I'll give you for instance. Not long ago, we were in a season that was pretty difficult, and one of the circumstances that was working against us was we had about half of our worship leaders get carpal tunnel. And so their arms were like all shriveled, they couldn't lead worship, and it was awful. I mean, half of our worship leaders that are supposed to be playing the guitar couldn't play the guitar because we had circumstances working against us, and that was a lot of our worship leaders got carpal tunnel or tendinitis, and they couldn't lead worship. And so that was working against us. A circumstance that might be working for you, maybe you just got a lot of people just starting to visit or coming around your prayer ministry, or a lot of people that are just starting to get introduced to your house of prayer, and they like what they see when they come, and maybe that's a natural circumstance that's working for you. So first question again was, what natural circumstances are working either for you or against you? This is going to help you figure out what resources you have at your disposal, how best to use them. Number two, what resources do you have access to in this season that you didn't last season? Or what resources did you have last season that you don't have this season? Maybe there were finances available last season that aren't available this season anymore. Well, you want to know what that looks like so that you can properly, assess the situation. Part three, what strengths can you personally offer the ministry? I found out a lot of hidden talents that I had no idea I knew how to do based out of necessity in the process of trying to build the house of prayer. I found out that I could, I can't design web, but I could run a website a little bit. And I had no idea that was a talent that I had. But then there were other talents, like I know I have a teaching gift. Well, that's a resource that I have to be able to help strengthen the ministry. So one of the things I do is I teach a lot because it's a strength that I have that I can help build the house of prayer with something that I personally, as the leader, have as a strength. And so you want to figure out what are the strengths that you have as a minister that you can bring to the ministry. Next question is, what skills do the people around you have? Now, this is massive because the Lord actually is the one building the house. He's bringing the raw materials. He just wants you to put them together. You've heard the old, story of the farmer, and the pastor comes up to the farmer and sees the beautiful fields, and he says, "Farmer, man, the Lord has blessed you. This is an amazing land that you have. This is such filled with abundance." And the farmer looked over at the pastor and he says, "You should have seen what this field looked like when God was in charge of it." And the point, of course, is, yes, the Lord brought the rain. Yes, the Lord strengthened the farmer. Yes, the Lord provided, the resources. But that farmer had to get out there and do a lot of farming on that dirt, give up all those rocks and move the weeds and all that stuff, plants and stuff, in order for there to be something that came about. And what we do as leaders is we look around at the skills of those around us, and we ask them how they want to get involved and how they can help. And a lot of them will want to get involved and help, and some of them won't, and that's okay. But the ones that do, those were resources that the Lord sent you as a leader, that it's our responsibility to help figure out how to steward and get involved. So one of the questions you want to ask yourself is, what are the skills of the people around me? Next question. What services can we pay for as a ministry? What I mean by that is, the finances are always a difficult point for the house of prayer. I recognize that. Again, we had a $0 budget when we were back in my living room until I started asking everybody to give $10 a month, just to help out, to pay for food and that kind of thing. But as the ministry budget grew, we gained an additional amount of services that we could provide for the ministry, like a website. That costs a little bit of money every month. But once we had a little bit of money, we could afford to get a website. The next is, paying for internet, having internet access to whatever your place is. People love having access to wireless internet connection. Little things like that. What are some of the services that you can pay for that will help the ministry? Don't just buy stuff, but only buy stuff that's going to help the ministry. But what I've found is sometimes money can buy something that helps the ministry in a way that all the efforts and skill sets around me couldn't buy. And when you add that to the overall picture, those little extras wind up increasing morale, giving you some access to some things you didn't have access to before, like a website, just all kinds of different things. And so you want to ask yourself the question, how can you best invest the finances that have been given to you to help build the ministry? And sometimes those are going to be, I love what Jennifer's done with some of the resources that she's come up with for the Border Network, and that is, she's had people come in and speak. She had, Marvin Adams come down and do something with you guys, and that was so encouraging. And then, she's done some stuff with some others, and I was able to come down and help. And that's another service that the finances can help, because you bring somebody else in, and they're able to help bring an injection and encourage and strength. So you want to ask yourself the question, what services can you afford to pay for with ministry money that will help the ministry grow? Great question. So the next point I gave you is an organizational chart. And on this sheet, I just gave you a little mock organizational chart. It's real simple, but I'll give you a little bit of information on it without going over the chart with you. The reason that you wanted to assess what season you're in, and you wanted to figure out what everybody's skill sets are around you, is because you want to try to build a ministry structure that fits you. And it fits you according to your resources, according to the season that you're in, according to the mandate that you have on the ministry, according to the people that you have with you. You want an organizational structure that fits you. And it doesn't make any sense to have a ministry structure that's more complicated than you can actually pull off. But it also isn't a good idea, it's not good stewardship, to have an underdeveloped infrastructure where you're missing out on valuable opportunities just because the time wasn't taken to figure out how to maximize your resources. So you want to know what your resources are, because you want to figure out how to build a ministry structure. And so you figure out, who can, help out with this, and what person can do this, and what are the needs of the ministry. And, we're growing in this area, so we really need to probably start investing some money and energy and human time this direction. You want to figure out how you can build a structure for your ministry to share the load. But that requires you knowing what the season is that you're in, and requiring what resources that you have access to. So creating a simple ministry chart can be helpful in just helping you identify what the immediate needs are that you have as a ministry, what the skill sets are of those people around you, and then also what holes you have that you don't have answers to right now, that maybe the person that's starting to come around, maybe they're God's perfect answer for helping fulfill that need. One of the things that I think is a misunderstanding is that sometimes as leaders, we get a little timid asking people to help, but the truth of the matter is that's our responsibility. We're supposed to minister to them. We're supposed to help them become healthy, encourage them, strengthen them. But the truth of the matter is, if the Lord told you to do something, start a church, start a prayer house, start an outreach to the homeless, start an orphanage, whatever, if the Lord commissioned you to do something, you're supposed to do that thing. And the people that the Lord sends to you, He sent to you. He didn't send to the guy down the street. He sent to you. And the fact that He sent them to you means there's a real good chance they're supposed to help you with the thing that the Lord told you to do. So when people come around my house of prayer, I ask them to help me pray. I'm like, the Lord commissioned me to build a house of prayer. Why in the world would these people be here if they're not to somehow fit into that overall plan that wasn't my plan? I didn't come up with it. It was God's. God's the one that told me to build a house of prayer. So people that come around, I'm expecting they're going to help build a house of prayer. Pretty simple. Well, you want to get people involved as best as you can. I'm going to go through number 3 and 4 pretty quick here, because I want to end here at 8. But I've got number 3 is building a team. It was God's wisdom to create us as the body of Christ, as the family of God, as a community of believers. And each of us has unique gift sets and skill sets. And it was always God's intention that we do team ministry. And so team ministry is fun. It's more fun. It's way more fun to do it with a team than having to do the one-man show thing. But there are some difficulties because it means that you have to rely on other people to do their job. You have to let go of certain things that you as a leader, you're able to do. You might even enjoy doing, but somebody else could probably do it, maybe even do it better than you. And so team ministry is the greatest blessing, but it also requires a little bit of work. A key to good leadership is learning how to delegate. Learning how to delegate well is a determining factor for growth. Delegation is critical to grow and to sustain prayer, because otherwise, without you delegating responsibilities, the house of prayer can only be as strong as you personally can pull off. And none of us want that, because all of us are weak people. And so the last thing you want is for everything to have to rest on your shoulders, because that means, you're going to have a bad day one day and things are going to fall through the cracks and all that. The best thing is to build a team and to do team ministry. And so my suggestion is to recruit a volunteer workforce, because most of you, if you're anything like how we started, and really even how we still are, even though we got 100 hours of live worship, the majority of our missions base, of our ministry, our house of prayer, is run by volunteers. We only have a handful of people that are doing this as their job. Most of what gets done is done by volunteers. And so I encourage people to recruit a volunteer workforce that is essential in order to be able to utilize people's limited amount of energy and time that they can give. Maybe they can only give 1 or 2 hours a week. Well, how in the world are you ever going to build the ministry if you've only got, people that can do 1 or 2 hours a week, and all we're ever doing as leaders is looking around for the next person we can get to, raise full-time support or we can hire as a full-time worker? The truth of the matter is the majority of the house of prayer is going to be built by volunteers. And so figuring out how to utilize volunteers in a way that's pastorally careful. What I mean by that is you don't want to burn out volunteers. You don't want to give them so much to do that they get burnt out and they can't pull it off, and they drop the ball and they quit and they feel all burnt out and like overworked. You don't want to do that. So my suggestion is, instead of recruiting 3 volunteers to do a lot of work, recruit 30 volunteers to do a very little bit of work each. And so I've got some suggestions on what that looks like. Part C, if you're still tracking with me, to get the most out of people involved, but to get them involved in tangible ways that really help build the ministry, I suggest creating volunteer positions based off of what you have available to you. And here are some points that I suggest in the creating the volunteer roles concept. One is create roles that serve your needs and mandate. Don't just make up roles that aren't helpful to your mandate, like, bird call ministry. I mean, it's like, man, but we've got this person, they're great at bird calling. Well, if you don't need bird calling, don't create bird call role. Create roles that are helpful to your needs and your mandate. But secondly, make positions that fit the skills of those around you. What I found is sometimes it may not be somebody's strongest skill set. Maybe their strongest skill set is bird calling, but I don't need bird calling. But maybe they really are still pretty good at greeting visitors. Well, that's awesome. Create a position for them that's useful for their skill set, but that still helps build your ministry so that you're not just making up positions that aren't helpful. Number 3, assign titles that are descriptive and appropriate for each role. I've just found that that's helpful. It helps give people a sense of meaning and a sense of belonging to the ministry. It's for them to have a job description and a title of what it is that they're specifically doing. 4th, make job descriptions simple and specific. I found that the more vague a job description is, the less anybody really ever does. You want to have specific job descriptions, specific roles, specific tasks, specific things that a specific person is supposed to do. And then number 5 is to do your best to reduce responsibilities so that a person can do their role in about an hour or maybe 2 hours a week. I found that by keeping tasks to that amount of time, they can pull it off with excellence. And the truth of the matter is a concerted hour a week can really be helpful, especially if you have a bunch of people all doing different tasks that they're all spending an hour on. I'm going to just give two little pieces out of part 4, and then I'm going to quit, and we'll do some time of Q&A and whatever else Jennifer wants to do. But I'm going to cover part 4, if you're on the notes. It's the bottom of page 4, and that is levels of involvement. My suggestion is create as many levels of involvement, as many on-ramps to get involved in your ministry as possible. This will help your short-term growth immensely. I'll give you some examples of what we've done at the prayer room. And not that you need to do these, but they're just to give you some different ideas, because some of them come from left field. Some of them make a lot of sense. They're kind of all over the board. And so I just wanted to rattle off some of what we do so that you can try to be thinking up ways that might work in your world to get people involved. So different ways to get people involved in our house of prayer. We have a girls' house. So those that live at our girls' house. We have those serving on our leadership team. We have those that come and sit in the room one time a week. They just come and sit. They just love to sit in the room. It's great. We have trained prayer leaders. We have musicians that serve on prayer teams. We have volunteer staff who all help with unique roles. That's what I was talking about a minute ago, assigning them a unique role that's an hour a week kind of a deal. And then we also have full and part-time staff. Now, here's the connection point for all of those. If you have people that are involved in your ministry, you've started as many on-ramps as possible, and you've got 3, 4, 5, 10 different ways that people can be involved, that is great at getting people in the door to your ministry. But here's the connection point. They need to have a shared common commitment to the most primary mandate of your house of prayer, and that is prayer meetings. If they share secondary mandates, that's great. That's awesome. But they all need to share the primary mandate of the house of prayer, and that is to actually have prayer meetings. So in our world, no matter what role someone may play, our expectation is that they help build our primary mandate, building night and day prayer. As a result, everyone connected to our ministry at any level shares the same common commitment of serving on at least one weekly prayer meeting. This is a requirement in order to be a part of what we do. And all the various on-ramps at this point for involvement therefore serve as building blocks to ensure that we can actually do the thing that we're supposed to be doing, and that is building a prayer room. And so all the different roles that we have, of all the different people and different ways people can be involved, all of them have the common connection point of they commit to prayer meetings, and they can choose which prayer meetings, and we help guide that a little bit so that we don't wind up with everybody on the Tuesday meeting and nobody on the Wednesday meeting. But the point is that we have all of them, while they might have different roles, while they might have gotten involved from a different angle, everybody in our ministry all shares the same common thread of our primary mandate, and that is a commitment to prayer meetings. And I want to suggest that all of you do the same thing. Find as many ways to get people involved as possible. But if you're a prayer ministry that's building prayer, don't let people just come around and say that they love prayer. Have them actually help you build prayer. And so get them to commit to a prayer meeting or 2 a week. And that can look a lot of different ways. And some of that is what we'll cover in the next session. So, Jennifer, I'm done, and I'm ready for you to take back over and help me know what we're doing next, if we're moving on to Q&A or how you want to handle this.
Okay, Brad. Thank you so much, Brad. That is wonderful and practical information. I was taking notes, so I really appreciate it. What I'm going to do right now with everybody is I'm going to unmute everybody's microphone, and let's give Brad a thank you all together. Okay, hold on just 1 minute. Let me see. I think I can.
This is going to get loud, isn't it?
Okay. Thank you, Brad.
Thank you very much.
So, was that helpful?
Yes,
that helpful?
it helps a lot.
It helps a lot? Okay.
It helps a lot. It helps a lot.
Very good.
Yes.
Okay,
Thank you, Brad.
Very good. Okay.
May the Lord bless you. Next time we'll meet you.
Thank you. So let me see. I think I've got Brad. Okay. I've got you muted too. Okay, and I have one thing to do here before we start Q&A. And let me get this up for just 1 minute for everybody, and then we'll start our Q&A. And I will try to do this quickly. Okay. I just felt that I needed to share this with everybody as we're going through leadership training, that we want to be a true servant leader, and that our leadership must be done with the right heart posture, and that's a servant's heart. Yeah. Because we can learn a lot of techniques, and these are wonderful techniques, and we need to learn them. But for our first thing is to follow the Lord in being a servant leader. So, and Jesus said in Mark 9:35, anyone who wants to be first must be the very last and the servant of all. Amen. And then he said in Matthew 20, verse 28, the Son of Man did not come to be served, but to serve and to give his life as a ransom for many. So that's what we want to remember as we're becoming leaders, is what Jesus had to say. Okay, now we are ready for our question and answer and discussion time. And it looks like that we didn't get our translator back. Bless her heart. So if you have a question and you can raise your hand, please feel free to do so and we'll call on you. Or if you can unmute yourself and you have a question, please feel free to do that. And then I'm going to be also checking to make sure that that everybody has an opportunity to ask a question. But first we'll start with those that can either raise their hand or unmute their microphone. Do we have some questions or discussion or anything that you would like to share or comments on this session? Looks pretty quiet out there. Where's this noisy group?
Whenever nobody has any questions, it makes me wonder if it was either really good or really bad.
Here, I'm going to ask Lee right now. I'm going to start here at the top. Lee, do you have any comments on this?
I want to ask Brad a question, though.
You do have a question. Okay.
Well, what I want to do in Arizona, we have a church in Mexico, but in Arizona, out of a house, just take a house, what is your suggestions on reaching people for, to start a house of prayer? How would you go about reaching people? We don't have I'm not talking about having a church, but have a house, just a house of prayer, period,
Yeah. If I start answering it from an angle that isn't what you're after, stop me and correct me. But I think what you're asking is the dynamic is going to be people that already know the Lord, because the truth of the matter is the majority of the people who are going to get involved in building the house of prayer are already going to have Christ. They're already going to have a little bit of a paradigm for Jesus' worth, and it's not that the lost can't become saved and be a part of it. It's just that they're not the primary ones that you're working towards, because you're trying to build a house of prayer for the exaltation of King Jesus, and to do that, you need people that already know Jesus. So my suggestion is, in this little house church, it sounds so much like how we started. We had a little house church and had about 8 or 10 people that were starting with us. And what we did was we just started daily prayer meetings, and we said, invite all your friends, and when they come, let's try to be buddies with them, and let's have little snacks afterwards and start to create a little bit of a community feel. But we did prayer meetings every day, and that's my suggestion for anybody getting started, is to start daily prayer meetings, either 7 days a week at the same time, or at least 5 days a week. Maybe you do evenings or afternoon prayer meetings, and start getting people to invite their friends and such to come to those prayer meetings. one of the most important things to build the house of prayer is the consistency, because you're trying to create a culture of prayer that probably wasn't there before. And in order to do that, people need to start feeling like, they can count on, well, man, every day over at this place, there's prayer going on. These people are crazy. They pray all the time. They're a house of prayer. It's a different thing than going to a prayer meeting every now and then. These people actually live lifestyles of corporate prayer together. And so you want to start to be able to build a culture of prayer, and the best way to do that is to start daily prayer meetings at the same time, and then start to build a little bit of community time afterwards, and just get the few people that are involved, whether it's 3 people or 10 people, get them to start inviting their friends to those prayer meetings and then those times of fellowship afterwards. And in fact, my suggestion is the best way to spend your money, whatever limited resources you have as a small house of prayer, the best way to spend your money in the early years is on snacks. Get snacks for after the prayer meeting and have everybody sit around and talk and hang out and become friends and fall in love with each other, and then have everybody high-five each other and say, I'll see you tomorrow, same time for the prayer meeting. That's a great way to start building the community. You build it slow, but you build it strong that way.
Okay. Now, I think you should, something I wasn't taking notes. I got this all on a recording, so I'll go back over it. But there's something about for a local church, have a local church going, have a few people, but the talents and the gifts of the people to contribute to your house of prayer, what particularly are we looking for?
Yeah, great question. I'll just list off a bunch of them, and then you can kind of look for, who might fit that model or those roles in your environment. Outgoing people are such a blessing because they can help relationally connect to the new person. So you tell your outgoing people, you get somebody who's a real extrovert, you say, hey, would you mind becoming the best friend of every new person? That will be invaluable to your growth. Next, you got somebody who they're really passionate. They love the Bible. You want them to be prayer leaders. You want people that know the Bible, who read the Word. They're people of the Scriptures. You want them to be your prayer leaders and really start learning how to pray. Anybody who can play any musical instrument or lead worship. And again, even if they can't lead worship, but they can just play a musical instrument, just the drums or the violin or a piano or anything, any musical instrument is super helpful because it just helps add so many dynamics to the prayer, ministry. Anybody who's administrative gifts are so helpful in just keeping track of stuff and making phone calls and that kind of thing. Somebody who really maybe has a pastoral heart, somebody who's really caring. Maybe have them make phone calls every week to the people that are coming around, just inviting them back. Just Fridays they make phone calls to everybody who's on your list. Start making a list. Have your administrative person create a list of email addresses and phone numbers of everybody who's coming around, and then have your pastoral person make phone calls every Friday and call everybody on the list every Friday. I used to do this for years with small groups that I was leading, and it had such a gelling effect on bringing everybody together because they knew every week they were going to get a phone call from somebody, from me, and talk about, hey, come on back, and how are you doing today, and anything I can pray for you. You want to, anybody who's got any, who's technology savvy, I promise you're going to want to you'll be glad that you have them because they'll be able to help you in so many ways moving forward. Just ask them creative ideas. If there's somebody who's technology savvy, just ask them, hey, what creative ideas would you have, Mr. Technology person, in how to help the house of prayer? And then just hear their ideas. And maybe some of their ideas won't work or their ideas may be too expensive, but maybe some of their ideas will be great. You'll find some added things that you never would have thought of that can really help build your house of prayer. If you've got somebody who is good at Facebook or good at Twitter, I don't mean somebody who has a Facebook account. I mean somebody that they are the Facebook queen, or they are the Twitter, extraordinaire. Man, they tweet every day, all kinds of stuff. Those people can be so helpful in helping build an online presence for your prayer ministry that will really raise awareness, and a lot of people will come and get involved because they got on your Twitter account or they got that access to your Facebook account. So people that, I mean, these are just normal resources, the things that they were already doing in some sort of life skill that can be valuable to help you build the house of prayer.
Now, another question, if you mind. How involved we have a lot of children in ministry, and how old do you think we should involve these with the adults, involve the children with the adults? Is there an age grouping or something like that should be involved?
You're asking the wrong guy, because my 8-month-old comes to prayer meetings every week, and I love it. We got 2-year-olds running around our prayer room. We got 80-year-olds that come in. If they're living and breathing and have a heartbeat, I say get them involved. And obviously, the measure of involvement that a child can have may be limited, but I would say create opportunities for the children to have real involvement. Like if you're familiar with IHOP, Kansas City, they do something called rapid fire prayer, where anybody can come up to the mic and pray a short little prayer. I suggest doing those, especially in meetings where you have kids, and let the kid come up there and pray the prayer that doesn't really make a ton of sense to anybody in the room, but all the angels throw a party. They're all excited. That kid just felt validated. They got to be a part of it. They got to pray. They're learning how to pray on the mic. They're learning how to be up in front of a room full of people. They're learning to talk to God. They're learning about being part of the team. I think all that stuff is invaluable. And so we let kids pray on the mic as soon as they're old enough to talk.
Yeah, that's good. Now, one more.
Yeah, go ahead.
I'm looking at reaching a region, 3 different cities about 25, 30 miles apart. How do we connect this with local churches involved in houses of prayer where we're connecting, you know what I mean? And involving the local churches for a transformation, to see a transformation of the region.
Let me see if I understand the question. Is your ultimate goal revival in this sense for the Tri-City region, or is your ultimate goal building a corporate house of prayer that everybody can be involved in?
That would be a corporate house of prayer.
Yeah, that's good. That's actually what we do. We're in the Dallas-Fort Worth area, and we have people come from about 100 miles away, for as many as 100 miles away, and we've got people regularly involved for a 50-mile radius on a weekly basis. So we've got that draw. The key is persistence. It's perseverance. The key is start prayer meetings and never stop them, no matter what happens. And then keep inviting people. What I see people do that I think it can be valuable, but I think it slows down the overall process if your goal is to try to build a citywide prayer ministry or a region-wide prayer ministry. What I've seen people do is they'll rotate where the prayer meetings are. So on Tuesdays, they'll do prayer meetings in this part of the city, and then on Thursdays, they'll do prayer meetings in that part of the city, and on Wednesdays, they'll do... And what it winds up doing is it really just winds up drawing the people from those particular regions, those areas on that particular night. But because you don't have a central point to be able to really build momentum, you never really wind up taking off. And what you wind up with is 3 or 4 or 5 disconjointed prayer meetings that really it's hard to get any synergy and to build. My suggestion is pick one location and keep doing prayer meetings at that same location, the same time, every single day of the week, and then don't stop. And then keep getting people, invite people to come. Distance is not an issue for people that are hungry. Again, I've got people that drive 50 miles, several times a week, every week, to come to prayer meetings. So It's because they're hungry. It's because we got a central location. It's because there's a little bit of a fire there. It's not a lot of a fire, but a little bit of fire. And it just took some time. It took perseverance. So my suggestion is pick one location. Don't move from that location. I mean, if you have to move down the street, okay. But, I mean, don't move, counties. Stay in the one location. Keep building prayer at that one place. And just stay consistent there, and then keep inviting people to come to that one location and recognize, Pastor, that it may take some time. We were in my living room for 3 years doing 14 prayer meetings a week. We did 7 prayer meetings in the morning, every day, one every morning, and then 7 prayer meetings at night, one every night. So we were doing 2 prayer meetings a day, 7 days a week, 14 prayer meetings a week. We did that for 3 years in my living room before we really grew past about 15 people. And so it's a long-term investment. But here it is 7.5 years later, and there's a couple hundred people that are involved in what we're doing. It's just staying faithful, being that farmer that just keeps plowing that field. Just stay put, hunker down, build yourself a good spot, and just keep on going, and the Lord will bless it. He blesses faithfulness.
Yeah, that's good. That's my answer. I'll let somebody. What's your last name? I'm sorry, real quick.
It's Stroup, S-T-R-O-U-P.
S-T-R-O-U-P?
Yes, sir. Correct, sir. That's right.
Okay. All right.
And you can go on our website. This is for anybody. We've got a lot of resources available on our website for free. It's theprayerroomdfw.com, theprayerroomdfw.com. We got a lot of resources on there. Stuff about the House of Prayer, stuff about how to, what we do. It might be a good resource to just walk around, visit on that website a little bit, just get some ideas.
Just one last question. How close are you to Irving?
We're about, I'd say 35 minutes, but we have people who come from Irving.
Because I'll be coming to Irving before long.
Awesome. Well, come see me.
Yeah, I will.
Amen. That's good.
Okay.
Thank you, Lee, for your good questions. Thank you.
Great questions, Lee. Thank you.
Yes. Is there anybody else that has any questions? I don't see anybody unmuting yourself. Let me see. Anybody else want to ask a question or make a comment? Oh, wait, I think I heard something. Who did I hear? No? That might be you, Brad. And Brad has a brand new book out. Brad, did you want to tell them a little bit about your book?
Yeah. I've been working for about 7 years, actually, on building or creating a handbook on how to build the House of Prayer. So it's a lot of this kind of practical information. And it's we've got them printed now, and we're selling them for $25, and it's 14 sessions on how to build the House of Prayer. I mean, just the fundamentals of it all, and a lot of great information on, how to handle, things within the church environment, what to do if you're starting it, as a missions base, how do you go from this many hours of prayer to this many hours of prayer? What do you do to train prayer leaders? Just a lot of different resources. And so the handbook, it's just called How to Build the House of Prayer Handbook, pretty simple. And then with that, for anybody that's interested, we don't have all the details together yet, but we will soon. We're going to start a House of Prayer planting school. It's a semester-long school that we're going to offer starting in the fall. And the point of that school is to take anyone who's either wanting to start a House of Prayer or who already has, or somebody who's a part of your House of Prayer that you just really want for them to get a bunch of training. Send them to us, our missions base, for a semester in the fall. We'll train them. We'll give them 1,000 ideas and resources. And plus what they'll be able to do is they'll be able to talk with people who've helped build the House of Prayer back from my living room days all the way to the point where we're at now. So great resources in, being able to, see, how to build the House of Prayer from the ground up. And then part of that course is this book, or part of that school is this House of Prayer handbook. It serves as part of the curriculum for our planting school. So that's something we're really excited about, because what I really want to do is I want to help get pioneers who want to go build the house of prayer, get them as trained and as ready as they can in a real-time environment of a house of prayer, and then let them go do the stuff. There's Q&A with our leadership team. There's a bunch of houses of prayer here in the Metroplex that we're going to take them on field trips to go visit other environments to see how others are doing the house of prayer. So that's something that we're doing in the fall that we're going to start that I'm excited about.
Okay, thanks, Brad. And if anybody is interested, and you wanted to sell those in groups of more than one, right?
Yeah, I mean, at this point, Jennifer, I would like, it'd be easier for me if you got a bunch of people that wanted them, maybe you could just buy, 10 from me, and then they can buy them from you or something. That'd probably be easier. Reason is we just don't yet. It's because we don't have enough human resources. If anybody can feel my pain on that one, we don't have anybody to run an online bookstore at this point, and so it's a lot of work for us to try to send, one over here and then one over there, and one person bought that one. So we're trying not to sell them except for in groups of 10. So it'd be easier for me if I could sell them to you, and if you had a few people that wanted to buy them, maybe that could work.
Okay, so if anybody is interested in Brad's new book, is it $25, Brad? Is that what the price is? Let me know, and I'll be doing an order, and we'll put it all together so that way people will make it easier for Brad's team.
And real quick, Jennifer, it's done in session notes, just like what we did. So I mean, it's the session notes, kind of like what we did today. Only each session is probably 8 to 15 pages long, and it's 14 sessions. So it's a syllabus format. So it's not a pleasure read. It's lots of information, chock full of ideas and information and strategies and that kind of thing.
Okay, thanks, Brad. Okay, now is there anybody else that has any questions, comments, discussion that you would like to share at this time? David Ray, do you have a comment? David there? David, are you there?
I am now. I had to get my phone out of my pocket and unmute it. I have to be honest, I've been watering all this time.
Okay. Well, do you have a comment or a question?
It's all very
David?
good. No questions. It all makes sense. All very good. Appreciate Brad sharing.
Yes.
Glad to be here.
Okay. Anybody else have a comment or anything or a question for Brad? Let me see. Or you could put something up on the chat if you want. If you're not on the phone, if you're on the phone, you can't do that. Let me see who else might have something they'd like to ask. Janie is brand new with all this. Do you have a question, Janie?
No, I don't.
Okay. Just wanted to make sure. Let me give people an opportunity if maybe they're being shy tonight. Let me see. Jenny, do you have a question?
No, that was amazing and really interesting, and I like it. God bless you.
Oh, very good, Jenny. Good comment.
How about my buddy Lori?
Yeah, that's what I was just going to say. Let's see what Lori has to say. Lori, do you have a comment?
Hi, Brad.
Hi, Lori.
No, I'm just wondering, for people that are in places where, let's say, you got 2 or 3 people coming, and it never grows, what would you say to that? Would it be something they aren't doing quite right, or maybe the timing, or what would you say to that?
Well, it was probably 2 years, Lori, or maybe even longer before we ever had more than 2 or 3 people in a prayer meeting. I think that's just how it starts a lot of times. And the key is perseverance. I feel like the building principles of doing daily prayer meetings, of reaching out to those that come, trying to befriend them, take them out to coffee. Try to be, friends with those that show up. Be relational, and then just stay consistent. Just keep doing it. And I would add, pray for people to come. That's a great prayer. Lord, send people. We're tired of it just being me and this other person in the room. Help us, Lord. Send us people. I think that's a great prayer, and that following some simple principles about doing daily prayer meetings at the same time, and inviting people, and then just reaching out and becoming friends, being relational with those that come. I think those are some key points, and that if you're not growing, if you're doing all those things and you're not growing, just keep going and give it a little bit of time and ask the Lord to break in, because he will.
Thank you, Brad.
Okay, let's see. Mary, I'm glad to see you're on, Mary. Do you have a question or comment? I think Mary's on. I just hope she was able to get on. Mary, you there? Oh, I don't hear her. Okay. You there, Mary? Oh, dear. Okay. And Sulema. Let's see. Sulema? Can we get you unmuted?
I'm
here.
here.
Sulema. Do you have a comment, Sulema? Okay, good. I figured you did.
Yes. Brad, it's wonderful you share with us. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Appreciate everything. God bless you. I hope you come in someday to NACO for teach us in person how you invite the people. Because it's very hard for me invite and no coming.
Yeah.
I invite every day and I can't see in the meeting.
You're doing real good. Just keep those prayer meetings going and ask the Lord to bring the people. And the Psalms say that unless the Lord builds the house, the laborers labor in vain. And you're doing the labor. You just keep those prayer meetings going. You keep inviting people and ask people to come. And then my suggestion is anybody who comes and gets involved with you, see if you can't get them to commit for a season, even if it's 3 months or 6 months, to say, hey, will you commit to being here with me every Monday? Help me on Mondays. And if you can get somebody to commit to Monday with you, and somebody to commit to Tuesday with you, and somebody to commit to Wednesday with you, well, now all your prayer meetings have at least 2 people in them, you and whoever you could get to commit. And so that concept of people committing to prayer meetings, it's an essential building block, because the truth of the matter is people are so busy that they imagine that they're praying a whole lot more than they actually are. And if we let our agenda or our circumstances or our calendar determine how much we pray, we won't ever pray. Instead, we need to write it into our calendar and say, I'm going to pray on these days at this time, and I'm going to be there and I'm going to do it. And that's one of the main things that we use as a building block that I talked about a little bit in the notes, of everybody involved in our ministry committing to specific times that they're saying, I'll be here, I'll pray on this day, I'll be here every week.
Okay. Thank you very much.
Yeah.
Okay, thank you.
Another thing that I've heard you say, Brad, is that as soon as anybody comes to your prayer room or to pray with you all, that you get their email address or ways to contact them. And just like you said, become a friend to them.
Right.
So, and of course, I think it's so important to cast the vision that we want to see the prayer and try to get people to commit, like you said, at least on some level commitment. Sure. Let me see if there's anybody else that would like to. You know what? Kathy, do you have a comment? There, Kathy? You there, Kathy? She might have gotten off. She was receiving healing. You there, Kathy? Nope. Okay. Anybody else have anything? Janie, did you unmute yourself, honey? You have something to say you'd like to share? Maybe not. Okay. Okay, that looks like, is there anybody else that has anything else? I think we gave everybody an opportunity.
Those were some great questions. I mean, that was great.
Yeah. Thank you all so much for thinking of all those good questions and sharing. Okay, so what I would like for us to do right now, Brad, would you pray a blessing over everybody?
Absolutely.
And if anybody wants to stay on for a time of fellowship with one another, say hello to one another, you are welcome to after the prayer. We'll pray, though, and then those of you who need to get off, please feel free to get off, and Brad's going to pray a blessing over us.
Well, Father, we thank you so much for saving us, for giving us your Holy Spirit, for letting us know your Son, Jesus. Father, I ask you to shine your face upon these leaders, to give them the spirit of wisdom and revelation to lead, to give them a devotional heart that all the days of their life they would long to know you, God. I pray, Lord, that you would make the space in between heaven and their hearts, Father, thin, so that, Lord, that they could sense what the Spirit is doing, that they could know your purposes, they could feel your presence. I pray, Lord, that you'd bless them and strengthen them and lead them, that you would give them divine direction, God, for their ministries, that you would give them favor, Lord, in their personal lives. I pray, Lord, that you'd help them, God, to lead and to know your purposes, to draw near to you all the days of their life. And even as Jennifer mentioned earlier, God, that you'd help them, Father, to be servant-hearted leaders. I pray, Father, that they would be loved, God, by those that they lead, because they would lead with such servant-heartedness. Oh, I pray, Father, that you would create godly, strong, unified communities for each one of these leaders. That, Lord, that you would connect them, God, to people that want to serve you in the place of the house of prayer. And that you, God, give them as leaders wisdom to know how to connect it all together. And that you would give all of those involved in each one of these communities that will come forth such a joy of doing the house of prayer together. May your joy rest on them. May your favor rest on them. I pray, God, for increase, Lord, that you'd allow people to come to each one of these houses of prayer and get connected and feel, God, a part and to help build the house of prayer, God, in those places and to connect, God, to the vision. Thank you, God, for these leaders. Thank you that you're building the prayer movement, you're building your house of prayer, and that you're using these, God, to do it. Bless them and strengthen them in Jesus' name. Amen.